Vanakkam. Hello friends. We have been seeing the rise of the early Cheras and how the first ruler of the early Chera dynasty, as identified by K.N. Sivaraja Pillai in his The Chronology of the Early Tamils, was the ruler who conquered the regions of Karuvur and hence extended the Chera domain into the regions of the Western Ghats. கருவூர் ஏறிய ஒள்வாள் கோப்பெருஞ்சேரல் இரும்பொறை is shown as the first ruler contemporaneous with the Chola ruler Tittan Veliyan, who ruled between 25 BCE and 1st century AD. Now, KNS correlates references in the Sangam literature with other sources, including the foreign notices of Ptolemy, and at the same time, he also gives us a disclaimer stating that cross-linking references for such an early period being very scarce, further investigation was required. The Cheras were famed for sea trade, and the port of Musiri finds a mention in several Sangam poems as a very famous seaport on the western coast. From the year 2007 onwards, excavations at the site of Pattanam in Kodungalur district of Kerala have thrown up a lot of evidence that has led to archaeologists believe that this was the ancient Chera port of Musiri. Today called the Musiris, the Musiris site has thrown up over 450,000 potsherds, the largest in any archaeological site in India, over a third of which belong to other regions such as the Mediterranean and Egyptian coast, attesting to early sea trade. And the director of the Pattanam excavations, Dr. P.J. Cherian, shows how, based on the depth of the excavation site, the timeline could be taken back to the 10th century BCE. Dr. Cherian mentions how the site has evidence to show that it was a thriving port city as early as the 5th century BCE. But none of the carbon datings or other available material evidence so far have pointed to an early established sovereignty in the region. So, this poses a great challenge in identifying rulers of an earlier timeline to the Chera dynasty as indicated by KNS. Koperincheral Irumburai was succeeded by two lines of rulers, Anduvancheral and Udiyancheral, and we saw how KNS establishes Udiyancheral as the son of Koperincheral. Several Sangam poems showing his military exploits. We saw the Sangam Puram poem 2 by Murinjiyur Mudinagarayar that went Vana Varambanai Niyo Peruma. Vana Varamban literally meaning a king whose fame extended to the limits of the sky. This particular title finds a mention in several poems such as Venri Nalvel Vana Varamban in Purananuru and Thenimir Narundar Vanavan in Ahananuru. Avai Duraisamy Pillai, in his book Sera Mannar Varalaru, The History of the Chera Kings, gives a far better explanation for this title, which is better than its literal meaning. An erudite Tamil scholar who wrote commentaries on several Sangam works such as the Natrinai and post-Sangam works such as the Silapadiharam that earned him the honorific title Uraivendar. Duraisamy Pillai travelled extensively in the Chera regions of yesteryears and has rendered some excellent maps in this book. We have seen earlier about the powerful chieftain Nannan who ruled over the regions of Yeril Kundram, which was part of Konkanam. Now, this chieftain controlled several tribal chieftains who ruled the northern regions of the Kongu country, and we also saw how, with the coalition of these chieftains, Nannan was able to stop the advances of the Chola kingdom from the east. To the west of this Konganam, out towards the western sea, lay several islands, one of which was known as Kubahathivu, a slightly larger island. This formed the capital of a dynasty known as the Kadambas, who ruled over several islands of the region. Kubahathivu is today identified with the regions of Goa, and the western Ghats that abutted this particular region was also known as Vanama Malai. watered by the Vani Aru, it was also known as Vanavasi. The Kadamba rulers were a seafaring tribe, and their heroics are mentioned in several Sangam poems. They slowly spread to northern Karnataka through the Konkanam, and by the time of the medieval period, they had reached up to Kalinga on the eastern shores, that is today's Odisha. They were a very old clan who worshipped the Kadamba tree as their totemic tree, and in some of the copper coins issued in the later period, the fish is shown as their royal emblem. Sangam poems talk of how the early Kadamba rulers were a constant source of threat to the Cheras on their south. In due course of time, the Cheras subdued them and brought them under their control, and hence earned the title Vanavaramban, bestowed on them for extending their territory up to the Vanamamalai in the north. Vanamalaye Varambaha Udayavan. In the next line of Chera rulers, three sovereigns are shown as contemporaries: Selva Kadungo Ariyadan, Kudakko Nedunjeraladan, and Palyane Selkelu Kuttuvan. That they were contemporaries is established by the link poet Paranar, who sings the praises of both Nedunjeraladan and Selva Kadungo Ariyadan. Selva Kadungo is shown not as a great warrior hero, but as a king of great munificence who gifted lavishly to the Panars, and one Sangam poem captures how he gifted a Panar with a small town which has yet to be identified by the name Okandur. He was also known by the titles Chikkarpalli Tunjiya Selva Kadungo and Mandaran Porayan Kadungo. He was considered the son of Anduvan Cheral. The title Porayan Kadungo meant that he was the ruler of Porai Nadu. Durasami Pillai shows how this Porai Nadu was carved out of the territories of the north of Kuttanadu and south of Kudanadu, with Tondi as its capital. He points out to the practice of the Chera rulers carving out a new territory from within their kingdom in order to accommodate a Chera prince, an heir apparent. Here, Durasami Pillai points out how the primogeniture system of the firstborn of the king alone being coronated and becoming the ruler was not a typical practice in ancient Tamilagam. Instead, territories were carved out with their own capitals, and all the sons of a ruler were coronated in due course of time. While the firstborn took over the primary seat of the kingdom, the others ruled from their respective regions and provided much needed support to the monarch. Durasami Pillai shows how at one point of time the Chera kingdom had 18 principalities with 18 rulers. Kudakko Nedunjeraladan, also known as Imayavaramban, and Palyane Selkelu Kuttuvan were both sons of Udayan Cheral. So while Udayan Cheral was ruling from the seat of Karuvur, his son Nedunjeraladan was coronated and ruled from a town on the west coast known as Mandai, and this Mandai finds mentioned in several Sangam poems. Thurai Kelu Mandai, Nannahar Mandai are terms found in Ahananuru, and in Nattinai, Ammuvanar sings Kadal Kelu Mandai. Canis mentions that whether this Mandai could have been the port city of Mandagara, noted in the Periplus on the pirate coast of South Kongan. Kudakko, meaning the ruler of mountains, Nedunjeraladan was known for having extended the domains of the Chera country in the north beyond Tulunadu, past the Airai mountains, and he probably fought with a few Aryan rulers in the bordering territories. Poets bestowed on him the honorific title Imayavaramban, the ruler of the Mount Himalayas, which could only have been a mark of respect, opines Canis. Whereas Duraisamy Pillai gives a detailed account of how Nedunjeraladan marched northwards with the support of several chieftains as well as the Pandya and Chola rulers of his time, right up to the Himalayas, where he actually planted the flag of the Chera kings with its bow and arrow emblem on its peak. Given the distance and the terrain in the middle that included dense forest, not to mention the several rival kingdoms en route, it could not have been possible for any ruler to march up north with a large army right up to the Himalayas, nor is this authenticated in any source. So then from where did this idea germinate? Canis gives a very interesting observation. The Padittrapathu second canto, sung by Kumattur Kannanar, sings the praises of Nedunjeralathan. And in the very first stanza, the poet eulogizes Nedunjeralathan's victory over the fearsome Kadamba tribes. And the verses go, Kavirthadai silambil tunjum kavari, பரந்து இலங்கு அருவியொடு நரந்தம் கனவும் ஆரியர் துவன்றிய பேரிசை இமயம் தென்னங்குமரியோடு ஆயிடை மண்மீ கூறுனர் மரம்தபக் கடந்தே. Now the beautiful English transliteration by Vaidehi Herbert. The yak sleeping on the slopes filled with coral trees dream of the narandam grass they ate and the wide waterfalls from which they drank, in the well-renowned Himalayas where Aryans live. In the land between that mountain and southern Kumari, O great king, you have ruined the strength of arrogant kings. Now, these arrogant kings, referring to the Kadamba rulers, the Kadambas were a formidable clan and considered front-rank heroes by several rulers extending from the Himalayas up to Cape Comorin. The poem continues, Palar musindu ஓம்பிய திரள்பூங் கடம்பின் கடி உடை முழு முதல் துமிய ஏயை வென்று எரிமுழங்கு பனை செய்த வெல்போர் நாரரி நரவின் ஆர மார்பின் போரடுதானை சேரலாத. Your warriors who cut down your enemy's flower-filled sacred Kadambam tree, the one honored and protected by many, and made a roaring battle drum with its wood, O King Cheralada, wearing strands of pearls and drinking palm fiber filtered toddy, you own murderous armies who fight wars. So from here, a colophon affixed to this work at a later date attached the epithet Imayavaramban to Nedunjeralathan. This was taken up later by the author of Silapadiharam and expanded with numerous details of imaginary victories over Aryan kings of northern India. KNS says, and I quote, In any case, the sooner we give up the practice of appealing to the highly imaginative poems Silapadigaram and Manimegilai for facts of ancient Tamil history, the better it is for sound research. Well, the Chola rulers are also shown in Sangam poems as having marched up to the Himalayas and hoisted their tiger-emblemed flag. And what is fascinating is the way in which the faraway Himalayas caught the imagination of the Sangam poets and how some of the scenes described in the poems, such as the yak eating the narandai leaves, are so realistic of the region. Imayavaramban Nedunjeralathan met his match in his contemporary Chola king, Velpah Tadakkei Peruviral Killi, and was killed in battle fighting this ruler. Nedunjeralathan's brother, Palyane Selkelu Kuttuvan, is then shown as taking on the seat of Karur. He first captured Umbarkadu, literally meaning elephant territory, believed to be in the regions of the Coimbatore district bordering the Animalai hills. This capture of the elephant tracks earned him the epithet Palyane Selkelu. Here, KNS gives a very beautiful explanation for the term sel. Quoting from Agananuru poem 323 sung by Puranattung Perungottanar, the poem goes, Palavu pala தடையிய வேல் பயில் அடுக்கத்து யானை செல்லினம் கடுப்ப வானத்து வயங்கு கதிர்மழுங்க. What the heroine's friend said to her, on the bamboo dense slopes with many large jackfruit trees like a moving elephant herd, clouds come down as rain, appearing like your hair. Now from these verses, the word cell is taken to denote a moving column of elephants as connected to the root word cell, which means to move. KNS adds a further deduction that it is highly probable that the term cell could be traced to the possession of elephants as furnishing a concrete standard of wealth in ancient times. Again, the term selvam from the same root cell meaning move, denoting to the transient nature of wealth. A later myth claimed that this king brought waters from the eastern and the western oceans to his capital in one day by posting his elephants to form a single line between the Bay of Bengal and the Arabian Sea. Exaggerated imagination aside, in those days the pachydom was a master of terror in the battlefield, and naturally the king who had more of them had a distinct advantage in the battlefield. Poet Palai Gauthamanar eulogized this king in Paditruppattu, crediting him with subjugating the whole of Kongu Nadu. To the south and east of the Chera Nadu at that time lay the powerful Ai kingdom. The region was known as Venadu, probably because of the dense bamboo forests, and the Pandya kingdom formed the eastern boundary of the Ai kingdom. We will continue to explore the prowess of the Ai rulers and begin the exploration of the early Pandya line in the next episode. Vanakkam.